Hey, welcome to the Skift podcast, another episode. This is Rafat Ali, CEO and founder of Skift. I am back, continue to interlope as the host of the Skift podcast. I'm not the regular host, but I like to talk to people that I like and people that are doing interesting things in the travel industry. And so I've done a few and I will continue to do more. Today, I'm lucky to have Jess Conroy. She's the CEO of Row. She has a great domain name, roh.co. So that's an easy one. And the reason I wanted, she's building a payments fintech startup in the hospitality sector. It's been 2 years, and she has done this previously, has built a previous weddings slash venues slash payments company. And that was, she bootstrapped it and then raised money and then for 10 years. And started this 2 years ago and recently raised the first round $9.4 million with a bunch of folks that we know in the travel industry, including Highgate folks. And so the reason that I wanted to talk to her is, one, she's a very thoughtful entrepreneur, is a veteran entrepreneur, and trying to demystify payments in the hospitality industry, among the most boring topics. And she herself said that, so I'm not just putting her down based on that. And then also I wanted to talk about building a startup in the age of AI, where not only is her company building solutions that are AI-based solutions for the travel industry, but also deploying AI within the company, and how she's thinking about it, particularly as she contrasts and compares it to her previous company, which also raised money and had a bunch of employees. And now she has a bunch of money and maybe less employees, and how she's thinking about it. So I wanted to talk about capital allocation, et cetera, et cetera. So welcome, Jess. Welcome to the Skip podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Rafat. I'm very excited to be here.
So Jess, this is 2 years into the journey.
Yep. Yes, it is.
And so let's start with a big picture question, which is, because since you understand payments, not only do you understand payments, you understand finance and money very well. And so as you started this company, typically in payments, you need a lot of capital to build a payment startup, just because of the nature of what the sector and how much money you need and backstop and all the other stuff that I wouldn't understand fully, but you understand. And so one, why did you start this company? And two, how are you thinking about sort of the ramp up versus the investment that's required?
Yeah. So I've been building in and around hospitality now for almost 15 years. And everything that I saw, everything is so focused on top line revenue growth. That's where all the innovation has always been. And rightly so, right? Generating more revenue, making every experience more valuable back to the business owner definitely matters. But what was often overlooked is the fact that for every new revenue stream, the support became very operationally inefficient. It's something you're going to hear me talk about over and over again, is operational efficiency and what that really means. And for us at Row, no one wants to talk about payments. We were joking about that before.
Yeah,
payments,
which is a great thing to then build a startup around, because nobody wants to hear about your company.
Right. Whenever I have the opportunity to hang out with you all and talk, someone gives me a microphone and I talk about payments and people start leaving the room. Right. It's definitely not exciting in that regard. But payments are the infrastructure play. And if we don't invest in the infrastructure, especially today in this environment with AI and all the technology, if you don't have an infrastructure, you can't exploit any of the innovation that's coming. And so for us with Row, the opportunity with payments is payments are the core, the way money moves through a hotel, and helping operationalize that movement and make it more efficient allows not just the support of all the innovation to come, all the top line revenue, it maximizes every additional revenue stream that a hotel could potentially capture. And so that's why we believe payments are actually not as boring as they might seem at first blush.
So give an example of like one of your client hotels. So this is deployed at the property level.
Correct.
Not at the corporate level.
Correct. You sell into the corporate level. Like our clients are very diverse asset owners, hotel operating companies, the brands. Sometimes we'll have a hotel that we work at that has 4 or 5 different stakeholders, that you're appeasing at any given time. The actual solution gets deployed for the on-property team to be able to more efficiently manage the transactions flowing through that hotel.
So, for instance, it's a Knickerbocker hotel that
Yep.
I know you guys are in. It's a Highgate property. It's
Yep.
a property that actually we know quite well. We were there with a hard hat tour before it opened,
Very
and
exciting.
so give me example of Knickerbocker. What are they doing?
Yeah. So with our solution, let's say Skift was going to host an event there and you would negotiate a contract. They would send you a PDF, most likely for you to manually sign and have to download onto your desktop. And then they would manually send you an invoice. You would figure out how to manually pay that invoice, whether it's filling out a card authorization form, sending, a wire. And then as your event came closer, you would get additional invoices sent to you, manually created by the property, manually reconciled by the finance team. And with Row, all that manual operational requirement to manage the way dollars flow. 80% of transactions today at a hotel require someone to manually process them. With Row, that goes away. So that contract gets loaded into our system. Our software reads that contract, automatically sends you out invoices, allows you to one-click pay however you choose to pay, automatically sends payment confirmations, and then follows up with you throughout the duration of that booking. If the value of that booking changes, let's say you decide to add more rooms, more services from the hotel, all that information gets stored inside Row, and the invoice values are then updated to make sure that the hotel is properly invoicing against the value of that booking. But also on the hotel side, operationally, all of that money flows in one-to-one reconciliation and makes it much easier for the finance team and the sales team to collaborate. And there's no more of, hey, did Skift pay that invoice? They're arriving tomorrow. All of the visibility is inside the platform for both the sales team and the finance team to see whatever they need to see at any given moment in time.
And does this then? I mean, the one of the things that hotels always talk about is that they're already overloaded with 10 different systems and RMS and PMS
Yeah,
and I've been in the industry for 10 years and still don't understand most of these things. But in terms of the acronyms, and so how easy it is to piece those softwares together. This, I'm guessing, either sits at the base of it or the top of it, however you want to look at it.
exactly. We like to think that we're sort of the underpinnings, if you will, and we're not trying to be another system. We're trying to be a foundational layer that can eventually speak to the other systems that they're already using. We get asked so often, what am I replacing? Or to your point, oh no, I've got to go learn another system. And actually, with Row, we're replacing manual tasks. And so when we talk about efficiency and, that what you were saying in the intro about building today in the age of AI, with Row, it's about helping make every person at the property more efficient. If they're no longer having to worry about managing where payments are, chasing clients down for late payments, you've got an arrival coming tomorrow and it's unclear whether or not that card's actually been processed or not. If you don't have to worry about those things, you can get back to hospitality and you can get back to having the people on property focus on revenue generating activities as opposed to what a lot of time is spent on today, which are operational burdens that really shouldn't exist with the technology we have today. And so for us, it's allowing hotels to do more by not making someone like, we onboarded a property recently and they were still faxing contracts and they were still,
Yeah, by the way,
stacks
that's
of,
not unusual. Certainly not outside the US either.
correct. And you've got stacks of paper. And so for us, when we talk about payments being an infrastructure play, that's what we believe, right? And so we believe that if you can create this operational efficiency, if you really use Row at its full value, we like to say we worry about payments so that you can worry about everybody else.
Does that, and how does that, besides the fact that bunch is automated and for the consumer on the other end, like me as a traveler,
Mm-hmm.
will it stop what I consider egregious things like a $500 hold on my credit card because they're afraid of me
You
steal
and I
this?
could you and I could talk about this all day long.
Yeah, yeah,
There is we're just getting started with payments, really,
yeah.
and with helping manage the way money moves through a hotel and making it more efficient. And when you start to really understand the flow of payments and how it's the beginning and the end of the guest experience, which I think is so interesting, like you just talked about, right? Like,
Yes, it is the beginning and end of the guest experience. You're correct.
right. And so for us, there's so much opportunity there. Can I tell you that I can make that pain point go away tomorrow? I'm not sure, but I can tell you that if we really start to understand what no one wants to talk about, which is payments, there's probably a lot of things that we can all uncover together that will create a more efficient both guest experience and operational experience for the hotels.
Yeah, which is like things like not just this whole, but let me the credit card on file. And guess what? I already gave you the credit card, so why don't you have the credit card already? And when I'm checking out, I mean, I know veterans know this better than I do because I'm not loyal to any particular hotel group.
Yep.
But like if you're, then like you just check out and leave your key there and it's automatically billed
Right.
to your credit card. But I'm always sort of hesitant on that because I just don't know where my credit card will be
Right.
dinged or will not be dinged. How will they know that if I checked out, what if they charge me extra? So there's always this thing in my mind. So I always end up not doing that. I just
Right.
end up going to the desk, even have to wait.
Right. I think, and that's the thing too, is there's a lot to be done with security and standardization and all of these things. And that's really at the core of what Row is you have to instill the confidence for the consumer as well. People don't like to travel with me because I like to show up at the front desk and pretend that I didn't bring my wallet because I want to understand what pieces of software and what tools the hotel is going to
Oh,
use to get my payment information, what that actually looks like,
and
right?
what happens most of the time if you don't have a
Well,
wallet?
so most hotels will then not everyone can ingest payments data. So usually what happens is someone will have to come around to the front desk. I will have to get emailed a secure authorization link to then put my card into because I don't have a card present.
Oh, just your, for instance, iPhone with Apple Pay.
Right, exactly. You can't do that at most hotels right now. So it's really interesting because that's where I like to see. Even though right now for Row we're primarily dealing more on the groups and contracted business side and sort of all of the B2B side of the house. There's so much opportunity across the entire front of house as well. So I'm always learning, but it drives anyone I'm traveling with absolutely nuts because it takes the guest check-in experience. Like it is not when you talk about sort of the optimal flow, probably the front desk team wants when someone checks in versus when they see me coming. I'm the opposite of what they would like the optimal.
Yeah, you're the troublemaker. Yeah. And we'll pick up the payment. So, do you consider yourself a payment tech or a fintech? Because like fintech is I guess the used to be sexy word a few years ago. I don't know if it
Yeah.
still is or not.
I think for us, we consider ourselves a payments software business. For us, payments are at the core of what we do, and the way money flows is at the core of what we do. I think that a lot of businesses like to say they touch payments, but just having embedded payments and allowing someone to process a transaction is very different than what Row does, where we are following the lifeline of a payment from the moment that you transact all the way through to the hotel having to reconcile into their general ledger.
Okay. All right. Let's go into the the business and the startup part. So, so you start this 2 years ago. What was your initial intent in terms of raising money, and where did you end up
Mm-hmm. So, having bootstrapped a business initially,
previously? Yeah, and you
raised
raised some money at some
and
point for
and then
yeah.
raised capital. I always think that some of the smartest decisions I've ever made and continue to make now because I deploy that discipline in this startup is when you have finite resources, right? Like if you think about it, like I always joke about when I first moved to New York City and would eat, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in my apartment, right? And some of the best financial decisions I made were those moments in time where you have to really be disciplined about the choices that you're making, right? And I think that sometimes when you have a lot of access to capital, it allows you to experiment, but you're also not as disciplined with the choices that you're making. And so this time around with Row, we've been very thoughtful about not just the capital that we're raising, but the partners that we are raising it from, as well as how we are deploying it. And I think that if I look at prior experiences in the prior business, and you said this at the beginning of this call, we're building in such a special moment in time that every single person I have working inside Row right now, every single team member that I get to collaborate alongside of every single day, everyone's more productive and everyone is able to do more and be more valuable to the business. And that has moved at such a faster clip than I could have ever have imagined just 2 years ago now. And so you look at original plans and original builds of org and team and what we thought we would have needed versus where we are right now and what we actually need. I get asked a lot, oh, you just raised this money, who are you hiring? And
Yeah, that was my question. Like, what's the first instinct when you raise money, which is you end up hiring a bunch of folks?
no, you
Yeah.
sit on it now. You sit on it. That. So your first instinct should actually be like, okay, I'm going to sit on it and I'm going to actually make very strategic, calculated investments and not, I think that's the thing. I think, years ago, everything was about opportunistic hiring, right? And preparing for growth. And you want to make sure that you have the infrastructure and the resources in place in order to achieve that growth, right? I think that my mindset has very much shifted in a lot of ways. And I'm lucky to have investors who appreciate that discipline and also practice it as well, where we can run small experiments, we can make small bets, but before we actually start to lay foundation or actually really invest, let's make sure that we have the proof and the data to make those investments, right? And I think based on where we are with technology, you're able to do that. Whereas, 5 years ago, experiments were more expensive to run, and so you didn't have that luxury.
Right. So, but in terms of capital allocation,
Yeah.
as a CEO founder, this is what, especially if you have money in the bank, that's really how we think about it. How are you? You said you put it in the bank, and your small team for now, 12 people. Uh, your previous company was about 40, 50 people at its peak, and a lot of what you're doing is property level implementation, which you would assume would require a bunch of folks to do. So, how are we thinking about capital allocation and then talent allocation?
Yeah. So you would assume you would need a lot of folks for implementation, but what you actually start to realize is the product in itself is very, very simple. And so we've built into the product what we call user guiding and user training, right? To meet users where they are. And one of the things that we're most excited about is we had one of our first properties sort of self-activate, if you will, where you're able to send them the logins. You watch them do the tutorial, you watch them, watch the welcome video, and they're off and running, right? And that doesn't work for every single property. But what we've learned is that if you start to build enough information to meet them where they are, and you can take them on these journeys that involve digital welcome calls, that involve, digital trainings, because the thing with Row is everything is cloud-based, right? So if we can share a screen like this, and it's probably every property's least favorite thing, but it's very effective from our perspective. We get on a call like this. And if I was going to train you, I'd say, okay, great. You've already joined our welcome call with your broader team. We're now going to do, your user setup, and we're going to ask you to share a screen in a minute, right? And no one wants to share their screen, right? But you give them that warning. And then, after 5 or 10 minutes of us talking and clicking through a little bit, they share a screen. No one learns better than by actually doing, right? Instead of just sitting there and having us sit next to them. And again, for some properties that want us to come on property, we're more than happy to. But what you also realize is that a lot of our users that are in the software, they don't have their own dedicated offices. They don't have their own dedicated space, to be sitting there and taking a meeting, right? So it's also sometimes much more comfortable for them. And so it's been trial and error for us, really learning what works, what doesn't work. We've also learned that webinars are very, very successful for our properties and user trainings because it allows them to, again, watch, see the happy path. And then it's more for the one-off questions and the sort of, okay, great, I've learned a baseline of how to use Row. Now I have these 5 other things I need help trying to do inside the software. How do I do that, right? And so it's been interesting because I agree with you. We used to think we were going to need large implementation teams across the country, et cetera. I think that at some point we'll build out customer success teams because hospitality, in-person connections never go away. I think that's one of the beautiful things about this industry. And so we spend a fair amount of time, visiting our properties and saying hi and things like that, but less from a training perspective, much more from a relationship perspective. Tell me what you didn't want to tell me over Zoom. What's that stack of paper still doing on your desk? Because it shouldn't be there anymore based on what I'm doing, right? That's more what, the in-person is for.
So you talked about customer success or customer service. In terms of what customer service is today at your company versus previous company, how are you thinking? Because you would assume that AI automation in general will take away a bunch of the customer service, will compress the customer service layers.
Yes, I would say so. That's one of the things that inside the software with our user guiding and our help desk and the automation. So if you think about it's so wild when you think about how quickly for at least for us for 2 years, right? The first iteration of Row that went live in, Q1 of 2023, you had sort of this help desk experience where you would click out of the platform. You'd have to open, a help desk. It was your normal
Like
sort
a
of
Zendesk type stuff.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like search, right? Now we're in the platform and you can you can click around and little pop-up windows can pop up, right? And you can kind of infer what someone's looking for, right? In that regard, and sort of serve them up help that that's not previously what it was. Our whole philosophy kind of with help is anticipatory, right? We don't want, if someone has to email us because they had a problem, we failed, right? Can we understand what they're trying to do and help serve them up solutions real time while they're doing it? And even if we watch sort of the data logs on what people are doing and we have, different reporting in place where something kicks out and we're like, hey, I don't think that person did what they want to do. We'll then have someone proactively follow up with a little help video that's hey, we thought this might be helpful based on,
What
these
you were
3.
trying to.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so that's very much, I think, where customer service is going. This might be an unpopular view. I don't love personally when I call in and it takes me a while to get to someone, right? So that's not something that we subscribe to as a company. But I think what we're trying to do is make the platform intuitive, make the tools readily available so strong that the phone calls are limited. And so that way that when someone's calling, we know they really need something in that regard. And that's what we've already started to see is that you see people in the help guides, in the in-app guiding, and you also can, if you start to really understand the user journey, right, you start to see the patterns and you can then make sure that you're building based on the pattern recognition to meet 90% of the people so that the 10% is the real people calling, or it's, I still answer that. I like to answer the help phones on the weekends, or it's, someone calling on a Saturday night because they've got a question, because they've got a contract about to go live and they can't figure it out. And they need your help in that moment in time. And there isn't anything other than helping them get comfortable with logging into Row and having that human touch. I think, especially in hospitality, I don't know that you want to ever get rid of that.
A bunch of questions based on that. So, because a lot of it is sort of the daily struggles of, not struggles, may not be the right term, but the daily challenges of building a company today. Like, so phone number, do you have like physical phone
Oh
numbers,
yeah. We have
uh,
physical phone numbers, we have physical chats.
like Google Voice type numbers, or through,
We're using Skype right now.
okay. Isn't Skype being phased out, whatever the Microsoft
Or we're
technology is?
using no, actually, I'm just kidding. We're using Zoom. I always have you noticed that Skype and Zoom had the same colors from those of us that are back in the day? And so the two of
I
them
haven't
like
used Skype in a while, but yeah,
yeah. So we use Zoom, the Zoom phone lines, but they're
Zoom.
really nice because it's also nice that for us, again with a lean team, we have someone who mans the phones, but then you're able to put the backup forwarding on. And so my Zoom, I'm on that sort of rung that if someone can't pick up, that
You are
it'll
the
start
backstop.
yeah, it'll start
Okay.
forwarding. And it's nice with Zoom in that regard.
Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Kopit, Editor-in-Chief at Skift, and I've got to be honest with you, I am just blown away by how fast our industry is changing. AI is transforming how people book, platforms are flipping business models and consumer behavior. It is more unpredictable than ever. And that's why I am so excited for this year's Skift Global Forum happening September 16th through 18th in New York City. This year's theme jumps into the future, Travel 2030, people, platforms, and new paths forward. You'll hear from leaders at Booking Holdings, IHG, AirAsia, plus dozens more shaping the future of travel. And this year, we've got more than just stage talks. We've got expert-guided roundtables and new networking formats designed to spark real conversation so you can do real business. Expect it to be more interactive, more personal, and more valuable than ever. Join me and the rest of the industry at Skift Global Forum. Use the code PODCASTS for $800 off the full price at live.skift.com. Hope to see you there.
Let's go back a little bit. As you're raising money, are you pitching it, because it's only in the last 2 years, so it's basically in the Chat GPT Gen AI hype, the peak of Gen AI hype era.
Yep.
How did that change your fundraising process? Like, are you saying I'm a payment tech in hospitality? There's like, oh wow, that's a very niche company. If you talk to like a generalist, not like
Yep.
Highgate type folks because they understand the market, but like the general VCs is, oh, that's a very specific enterprise
Yep.
software company, versus I'm a Gen AI startup in payments, and
We did not do that. That might have been an easier path, but we did not do that. So we definitely joked that if we had pitched ourselves in the way that you just said, things would be different, from a fundraising perspective, because there's just such a focus on the foundational change that AI will bring to the table. I think that before I built my prior business, I sat on the other side of the table. I worked for inside the investment community, inside the venture space, and I saw different sort of moments in time, not the same as what we're having right now, because this is definitely a foundational shift. But you see the influences of these sort of, focuses. But then what you also then see is you see a lot of companies that attach onto that, but they're building feature sets and they're not actually building businesses. And I think with both Row and sort of everything I've done in my entrepreneurial journey, for me, there's always been an innate focus on, are you building a company that can actually sustain itself and be profitable? And that is a focus for us. Like, what is your revenue generation path? When I started my prior business, it was sort of starting to be that height of just get a bunch of users, get a bunch of eyeballs, right? And then figure out how to make money after the fact. And that never really resonated with me personally. And I think similarly here is that we definitely take advantage and use the technology. Like, there are pieces of our software that are bringing to the forefront what this innovation brings. But we're doing it not because that's the hot thing to do, but because it makes sense with how we're building our business and where we see our business going. And I think that has always been very important to me. And I think as a result, you end up finding the investors that also aren't just looking for anything that has the word AI attached to it, but are looking for businesses that actually need to exist. And with Row, going back to what we were talking about, is, well, no one wants to talk about payments at all. And I see that we segued out of it entirely because it isn't that much fun. If you don't have the right infrastructure in place right now with where every innovation is going, you won't be able to use that innovation. And that's something that we always talk about a lot with the hotels. I was joking with you, I was just on the phone with somebody having a conversation, is that you have to invest in the infrastructure today. If you keep everything offline, you will be so far behind where the world is going in that regard. And so for us, part of this shift in sort of our narrative is that payments are an infrastructure play. They become that foundation. And so we're trying to bring all those transactions online, if you will, so that you can start to be a foundational data set to then be able to take advantage of all the technology that's on top. But if you don't have the right foundation, like you're not like the woman whose desk has a stack of papers on it, they're going to be so far behind and trying to take advantage of any innovation. And so I think that there was a shift there for us. But I think I was listening, I think it was at your innovation conference, and it was
conference,
yeah. And also as I've heard, a lot of people say that where to invest from a hotel perspective and figuring out how to invest at this moment in time is probably one of the biggest challenges, right? And you have to be focused on innovation, but you have to be smart about what that innovation is in that regard. And I think that inevitably is everyone's challenge. It's my challenge building. It's probably your challenge. It's, every hotel operator's challenge, right? Is there's so many different things that you could be investing in at this moment in time. And so I think for us, from an investor pitch perspective, being able to say, like, AI will transform hospitality, but if the foundational layers are not built, someone has to go do that first.
When you were building the software, this was, I guess, right around the time ChatGPT launched, or right before, or right after. And so how much of, that probably was too early, but like how much of today, how much of Gen AI, LLM based things are baked into the software, and does it need to be? Does everybody have to do that?
We are very cautious on what and how we are using Gen AI because of the data and the privacy standards that I think are still being worked out. And so for us, everything that we deploy inside Row is very proprietary and is our own. Now we are using Gen AI and models to help build and to help power our team and to help make us more efficient. But anything that's in Row right now is homegrown because of that. So think about it from this perspective. Like, we're reading the contracts for, hundreds of hotels, and those contracts have complex relationships with businesses. Some are multinational, some are corporate, some are governments, right? And making sure that we're not, as much as the models tell you they're not using the data or they're not learning off of it, we have to keep all of that closed within our
Plus
system.
You're working with these large hotels which have specific policies of not being, like we run into this with some of our contracts, even though we're not in the payment space or whatever.
Yeah, and it's that data. I think that at some point that data privacy layer will be figured out, but I think that we're a little bit farther away from that in some ways.
There's a bunch of conversation in Gen AI, I don't know how much you're following it, around sort of the system of record. Like, you are, I guess, one of the system of record softwares, or certainly you're working on top of system of record softwares, and that they will go away because and I may using it technically the language wrong, but like you would be able to query the raw data directly and be able to do everything you can do using inference or whatever agents. I guess those are the two terms, and I may be using them wrong. But
the key you just said is you have to have the raw data, and that's where we sit. That's kind of how, when we talk about sort of where we sit, to your point, you have to have the raw data. Before Row, stacks of paper, people manually keying in payments, manually sort of reconciling. You've got ledgers living in Excel files, et cetera. But you've got to build the raw data set. And so that's for us sort of where we sit. Now, to your point, because you build on top of that 100%, but you've got to have the raw data set first.
Well, aren't you then competing with like Stripe and stuff? Like, wouldn't the payment processing software like Stripe? I don't know how many hotels are using Stripe. I don't know that for sure. I don't know enough about that part. But are they using Stripe type technologies, or they're still on some of the older school companies?
They are running on older, let's actually rephrase that. They are running on more established. I don't like the word older because I think I like the word established because those businesses have a lot of value, have a lot of information.
Right.
Most hotels that we work with, because we work with predominantly enterprise level hotels at this moment in time, do work with established payment partners. And those established payment partners have been foundational in in-person transactions. As transactions have moved away from in-person, there is an opportunity in that regard. The thing that's interesting was when you think about payment processing and you think about sort of what you ask of like we're competing, the answer is no, because at the end of the day, the nuances that hotels need in order to be able to adopt our solution, you can't just plug and play a payment processor into that stack and get it to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's come back to your hiring process. So you said you're using Gen AI, for instance, to do coding to build the software. Maybe some of your tech folks are doing it. Is the 5x programmer here, or that's still a myth? Or I don't know, it's 1.25 programmer. It's still better than than 1x.
I think it's a very good question. I mean,
how many programmers do you have on your staff?
So to answer your first question though, every single developer that we have right now is way more valuable than what I ever thought they could have been. Like going back to like what we were saying, if you looked at sort of our hiring plan from 2 years ago versus what we've been able to accomplish, you wouldn't have been able to argue that 2 years ago. You would have been like, absolutely not. There's no way you can do this, right? And at this moment in time where we think about it, where could you hire more to go faster? You know, the challenge is certain things are so linear that you could hire more, but you wouldn't always be able to go so much faster. You could go build other things, but is that the right thing to go build? Right, in certain ways. I know that our team is it, 1.5. Can I quantify it? Not really sure. However, one of the things that we have been talking about is I think where you used to need different layers of talent, I think the reality is you can use higher tier talent because they can do more and you don't need to support them with, so much of the, like you used to need such like a breadth, if that makes sense. And I think that now each engineer we have can do more horizontally as well as vertically, that you don't need the same depth that you used to need. Our team right now is 5
developers
on the inside.
Yeah. Yep. And are you in person or you're a virtual company? Well, you are in an office.
I am in an office. We have some team in our office in New York. And then from COVID holdovers, we do have team all over, but we've all been building together for quite some time.
Would if I talk to you in a year from now, how many more employees you think you would be adding?
So such a great question because I argue about this all the time. So there's a running joke where I'm like none, and that scares some people on the team and some of our. If you talk to me from a year from now, we'll definitely have more talent on the tech and engineering side. Beyond that, and then as we continue to become more of a presence in the way that we are running payments and supporting the hotels, you might need sort of more infrastructure, if you will, on your traditional, finance compliance side. But am I going to have this huge sales force? No. Am I going to have...
So the non-tech part of the business and this is true for, because developer and tech world, you can see the implication of AI and what we just talked about. In the non-tech part of the business, which is go to market, BD, sales, implementation, etc. Implementation, you said you can, a lot of it can be automated, which you're trying to do. So where do you see that part going, the non tech and maybe finance part, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think whereas you used to need every silo of a business to have sort of these layers, I don't want to say they become one person teams, but they don't need to be as big. Like I think from like a even on like the for us like the account based marketing and things that we do, like prior business, you had like two copywriters and people helping to write, email drip campaigns and all of this. Now you're throwing it into chat and you're like, hey, here's my baseline for these four, tweak this email, update this, and so there's just, and that's just such an obvious use case where then I think you can have someone that needs to drive the strategy. It goes back to something that we talk about a lot, is that the output's only as good as an input is, right? And how you prompt and how you query. And that becomes sort of a muscle that everyone has to build, right, in that regard. But instead of having, like, if we start to invest heavily in marketing and account-based marketing and things like that, which for our business, I'm not sure that makes sense based on like the decision-making process in our business, but like, let's just say you were. Whereas previously that organization might need 4 or 5 people to run it. Can you do that with one person who knows how to use the tools the right way on a go forward and can manage it and has the data? I don't know the answer there, but I just don't see us needing as many people as you previously would have thought a business like ours would need. There was, I don't know if you saw it, there was a data set published on some AI companies and their headcount versus their valuation. And the more profitable businesses had less people. Obviously, the bigger valuations also had less people.
Very awesome. How you said you talked about muscle. So how are you developing your own personal AI muscle, if you will, as you're going about your day, as you're thinking about strategies, thinking about tactics?
Yeah, I use it every single day, and I continue to be coached.
What's your weapon of choice?
Depends on what I'm doing. So our engineers are big into cloud. And if we're doing anything, so for more from a technical perspective, that's what makes sense.
Yeah. Cloud, yeah.
We use internally, I use chat a lot.
GPT, yeah.
Because I have found conversationally for what I need to do, it works far better than others. If we're doing things internally, we want to own the data. We have licensings with other players like Google, like inside G Suite, they're allowing you to have your own. And that's something I think for us, like we're hyper aware of the data and the privacy piece to it. So I think that's something that we're all trying to index on right now. But what AI has allowed me to do is get smarter on things where previously, like let's say you're trying to explore something, or let's say recently a use case was all of a sudden there's been additional regulation around like payments, things like that. Previously, you'd have to go call 12 people. You'd have to leverage your network to try to find someone that was at the forefront that understands, what that's going to mean, et cetera. Now you're hopping into weapon of choice and you're like, hey, tell me more about this. Tell me more about this specifically to this. Tell me why I should care about this. Tell me how to write an SOP to manage against this. Tell me the questions I didn't think to ask you. Like that, inside of 30 minutes, all of a sudden you're showing up to whatever meeting that you have, or for me, whatever conversation I need to then go have with our lawyers or our compliance team. Instead of wasting 4 hours of their time getting me smart, I show up and we're already on third base of the conversation. I think that is transformational. I also think with other junior people on the team, coaching them on how to use chat, or again, whatever else they're using, how to use the tools to get themselves smarter, right? Like I've seen, one of our team members who is phenomenal become even more valuable because she's learned how to use chat to build frameworks, to build checklists, to build, instead of it used to be like, hey, how should I think about doing this? Shows up to every meeting and is like, hey, here's my proposal, here's the checklist, here's everything else it told me to think about, and here's the 3 other things that I wasn't sure if we needed to do as part of this, right? And I think that, like, you think about like a chief of staff, I think the old notion of a chief of staff, is either you have a chief of staff who then can prompt so much better and they're no longer even just a chief of staff and can actually execute on things, or you have a very junior assistant who can punch like a chief of staff used to be able to.
Yeah. I have a chief of staff and she's phenomenal and definitely has been super sized, if you will,
Right. I
as a
think
result of. Yeah.
so. Do you remember, like, for me, what's interesting is a couple years ago, everyone was like, oh, and I guess still now, a couple years ago, people were more concerned that AI was going to take away opportunities, if you will, right? But
Yeah.
we also then heard, then the counter argument, it's not going to take away opportunities. It's going to make, actually, if you learn to harness it, it's going to make you more productive, and it's going to make every person, if you have the right people, more valuable. When I first heard that, I was like, sounds like you're just trying to spin the narrative here. Fast forward to where we are right now, I see it every single day with every single person on my team. And you also can see the productivity of the people using it and who have learned how to use it the right way versus those that haven't. And you can see real time, we can see the people being left behind. And then as like our leadership team, you have to go get those people and bring them, because the longer you wait, the more left behind they're going
The more left behind. Yeah. I mean, the thing that is unfortunate is that the people that are graduating today are probably at the most disadvantaged. You're a small team. I'm guessing a bunch of them are experienced folks, and in our company, one, we've slowed down hiring. It's the same reason you have. We barely made any hires. So if we've had, these are expansion hires in areas that we're not in. So these are people that we just need anyway, or some replacement hires at times. Even then, on the replacement side, you have to think
right.
about.
Because then sometimes somebody goes and you're like,
Yeah.
can that person do that with this tool over here? And we don't actually.
Yeah. So it's really, I think it's less about existing people, of like cutting down existing people, certainly in a smaller companies like ours. It's more about, do we need more new people? And so the existing people are probably fine if they upskill themselves.
Yep.
It's the new people that coming in, particularly at the entry level, that are at a disadvantage. So like, certainly in the world that I exist in, like journalism school, I with a straight face tell any kid that wants advice to go into journalism school today? I cannot. It's just, which is, I would say. Anyway, well, this has been fascinating. I'm watching, and it'll be fun to watch you build the next phase of your company. I know you didn't call it Series A, but let me call it Series A, and then so it'll be fun to see what the Series B milestones are for you. And Series B, as you know, is the hardest round to raise at some point, or maybe you don't need Series B. In that case, you have to, give existing investors a return on the current cap table, which would be good. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jess. This has been great. And we'll talk soon again.
Thank you so much, Bob. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the Skift Travel Podcast. Wherever you're listening, please make sure to subscribe. If you like what you're hearing, rate us 5 stars or leave us a positive review. It really helps get the word out about us, our podcast, and make sure that we can still continue to bring it to you free of charge every week.
If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell as well. That way you'll know every time we have a new episode.